Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church, Stony Stratford, and we're continuing our series of short talks in the book of Psalms. And today we're looking at a Psalm of David, Psalm 131. And this is a psalm about being in a humble and happy state. Now that's interesting because David was a great king, but he also made a few mistakes in the past. So maybe this is a psalm about what he'd learnt and how he'd found the best way to be humble and happy despite those mistakes. I've always been keen on physical fitness and I enjoy weight training. And there's several things you've got to understand if you're going to get the most out of lifting weights. And it's basically this as a list of do's and don'ts. And a key one is don't overtrain. One of the mistakes people can make when they start that form of physical activity is to think, right, if I do it every day, say I'm going to do bicep curls or bench press, and I'm going to do it every day, that's got to be better than doing it a couple of times a week. Not true. The body needs rest. That's a do. Rest. Don't overtrain. Another do. Have a good diet. And you will get much more out of your training than if you train non-stop. And this psalm is basically like that. It's a series of do's and don'ts. And David starts with the don'ts. And the first thing is, don't be proud. Verse 1. My heart is not proud, O Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. One of the things we know about David is that he never sought or was seeking out a reason to become king. No, he was appointed by God. And because of that, for much of his reign, he looked to God. And I suspect those first words are influenced by the fact of when he'd failed, he'd realised he'd stopped looking to God. He'd acted in a proud way. If he decided to do something, who was going to challenge him? Well, he realises looking back that the thing is to be humble, to look to the Lord in everything. Well, those are the don'ts. What about the do's? How do you get to be in a happy state? Verse 2, but I have stilled and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. When children are not weaned, they crave their mother's milk and they will cry when they get hungry. But there comes a point where they are in a happy and contented state, well fed, well looked after. And David can do that now because he realizes the constant in his life is God. He looks to God. When he looks to God, there's nothing to be proud about. He is a servant of God. God bestowed his kingdom on him. So what's he got to boast about? So David then does what we all do when we discover something good. He longs that others would know this. Last verse of the psalm, verse 3. O Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. He wants people to experience what he has experienced for himself, that happy and contented state. The state that doesn't long after things that one shouldn't have. The state that looks to the Lord to be the provider of all. Jesus had words which are very, very similar to this. And we can read about them in Matthew 18, verses 3 and 4. Jesus said this, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. It's not a case of being childish, it's a case of being childlike. Let me give you an example. I was very, very small as a child, and so going places which were new to me was a scary experience. However, if I had my dad holding my hand, oh, that was different. I had real confidence. I could put my confidence in him because he was there. Whatever would happen, he was there with me. That's how we need to be with God. The great Victorian preacher Charles Spurgeon said this: "This is one of the shortest psalms to read, but one of the longest lessons to learn." Let's pray that we can learn this lesson and know David's secret of happiness and contentment. Thank you for listening.